So if you've been around anyone under the age of, say, 12 recently, you might have heard some things that, well, they sound like a completely different language. We're talking about words like skibidi, gat, and riz. Welcome to the absolutely strange, kind of confusing, and massively viral world of Gen Alpha. It's a world where a bizarre YouTube series about singing toilets has completely taken over, and a new term has popped up to describe the fallout: brain rot.
And this quote from a teacher on Reddit, man, it just perfectly captures that feeling of total bewilderment that so many of us have. It describes a world where the actual meaning of words can feel, well, less important than the meme itself. You know, where phrases just get repeated in a loop and nobody even really knows where they came from. It's the perfect place for us to start trying to unpack what on earth is going on.
And you know, this isn't just kids messing around online. This slang is having a very, very real impact in the physical world. It's actually causing so much disruption in schools that teachers are having to get involved. We're now seeing schools literally ban these words just to try and keep some sense of order in the classroom.
Okay, so what are these words we're even talking about? Well, here's some of the heavy hitters. You've got skibidi, which comes straight from that toilet series we're going to get into. God is slang that's used to express surprise at someone's backside. Riz is just short for charisma. These terms, they're born from memes and inside jokes, and they've just spread like wildfire on platforms like YouTube Shorts and TikTok. They've created this whole verbal shorthand that, honestly, can feel completely impossible to understand if you're on the outside.
But, okay, before we all panic, let's just remember that every single generation has its own nonsense slang, right? For millennials, it was shouting "what's up" into the phone, or for gamers, yelling "Leroy Jenkins" before charging into a fight. This kind of stuff, this seemingly meaningless slang, it's almost a rite of passage. It's how a new generation builds its own identity and its own unique culture.
So where is most of this coming from? Well, a huge chunk of it can be traced back to one single, incredibly bizarre source: a YouTube series called Skibidi Toilet, which has clocked billions, and I mean billions, of views. Now, to really get Skibidi Toilet, you first have to understand something called machinima. It's this style of filmmaking that's been a part of internet culture for decades. Basically, creators use the graphics and characters from video games, in this case the classic Half-Life 2, to tell their own brand new stories. So, as weird as it is, Skibidi Toilet is actually built on a long tradition of digital creativity and remix culture, where really anyone can be a filmmaker with the tools they have.
And what is truly wild is just how fast this whole thing evolved. I mean, it started as just a simple, repetitive meme made for the YouTube Shorts algorithm, but within months, it blew up into this complex story about a war between singing toilets and an army of beings with cameras and speakers for heads. Then it went full-on Marvel, with these epic Titan battles and super deep lore. And in a twist that absolutely no one saw coming, it's now reportedly being turned into a feature film by Michael Bay, of all people.
So this brings us to the central concern. It's not just that the content is weird. It's about what a constant diet of this kind of fast-paced, maybe low-substance content is doing to young, developing minds. And this has led to the rise of a pretty provocative new term, brain rot. So what does this term actually mean? It's really more than just an insult people throw around online. It's become a catch-all phrase for this growing anxiety that parents, teachers, and even a lot of young people themselves have about the effects of being constantly plugged into an algorithmic feed. To put it a bit more formally, brain rot is what experts are calling a state of cognitive decline that's caused by digital overload. You know that feeling when your brain just feels like mush after hours of scrolling? That's it. It's a mental strain that comes from being just bombarded with hyper-stimulating and often pretty meaningless content. And the scale of exposure here is just massive. According to a recent report from Ofcom, a staggering 81% of kids and teens are regular YouTube viewers. It is the primary media source for an entire generation, which makes the content its algorithm serves up incredibly influential. And this chart, well, it illustrates a potential consequence. Now, it's not a direct cause and effect link, but a lot of people are pointing to a really troubling correlation. Data from the National Literacy Trust shows that as digital media consumption has exploded, the enjoyment of reading has just plummeted. Just recently, only about a third of young people said they enjoy reading for fun. That is a massive drop since 2005. And the experts? They have very specific concerns. They're worried about shortened attention spans, as our brains get trained for constant newness. They're seeing kids struggle to adapt to slower, real-world activities. And this is especially critical because the part of our brain that controls attention, the prefrontal cortex, isn't even fully developed until we're 25.
This constant stimulation can also desensitize the brain's reward system, and it's even been linked to psychological distress.
So, why is this all happening now, with this generation in particular? I mean, we've had slang and weird trends before. To really get it, we have to look at the unique digital world that Generation Alpha grew up in. It is truly unlike anything any previous generation has ever experienced. This insight from researchers is so key. Gen Alpha's entire childhood was fundamentally changed by the global pandemic. At a really critical time in their development, their schools, their friendships, their entire social lives were just forced online. This just massively accelerated their immersion into the digital world in a way that was often really isolating and just plain confusing. And just look at this comparison. Previous generations, we grew up on 20 or 30-minute TV shows. They came on at a scheduled time, they had a beginning, middle, and end. Gen Alpha is being raised on an infinite, algorithm-driven feed of 15 to 60-second videos that are designed for one thing and one thing only, to grab and hold your attention for as long as possible. Their brains are literally being wired by a totally different kind of media.
So the big question is, what can we do about it? You know, it's easy to panic, but experts suggest a much more practical approach, moving from just pointing out the problem to finding real, actionable solutions.
And look, the main takeaway here really isn't to just demonize Skibidi Toilet or Gen Alpha's slang. It's much more useful to see it as a symptom, a weird, chaotic, but ultimately logical result of a whole new technological and social environment. It's a product of algorithms, psychology, and the very unique circumstances of their childhood.
So health and education experts are recommending a three-part approach. First, curate your content. This means being an active user, not a passive one. Intentionally follow creators that make you think, or laugh, or learn something. Second, set limits. Use the tools that are already on your devices to set clear boundaries on screen time. And third, and this might be the most important one, teach digital literacy. This has to be an ongoing conversation about how algorithms work and why content is designed the way it is to keep us watching. And all of this leaves us with one final and really crucial question. In a world where our content is getting infinitely faster, shorter, and, let's face it, stranger, what are we training our brains and the brains of the next generation to value? What happens to things like deep focus and critical thought and creativity in the age of brain rot? It's something we all really need to be thinking about.